SteamPunk Minecraft. The Aether Dimension, a mysterious world in the sight of our future skybase. Join me as I craft an airship, the only appropriate way to traverse around the Aether. I'll encounter fierce foes and blocky bosses. That is a cool pig. We're entering the Aether in SteamPunk Minecraft. You want to play mod packs with friends, but you can't seem to find a good server. And the free ones? With the big mod packs these days, free servers are just too laggy. Luckily for you, there's BISECT hosting. They host my server, and with plenty of affordable options, they can host your server too. And the best part is, they support almost every mod pack. Use code Doublesal at checkout for 25% off your first order. BISECT hosting, a great site for great servers. Welcome back. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. You could say it's out of this world. All puns aside, today I'm going to go to the Aether Dimension. Why? Because it's included in the mod pack. Going to the Aether also gives me an excuse to craft another vehicle, one that we have yet to make. But before I get ahead of myself, I'm going to begin this video by going to the Nether to harvest some much needed glowstone. I went into the basement, hopped into the Nether portal, and began wondering whether or not that plant had grown. I'm talking about the soul sprout. Now their main purpose was to fuel the soul lantern, that lamp I carry around in the Nether that keeps me cool, but these things took way too long to grow. After that, I left the farm, hopped into my trusty gyrodyne, and began ascending way up towards the Nether ceiling. Reason being, that's where all the good stuff grows. I'm talking about glowstone. I spotted a nice little cluster of glowstone, and once I did make a safe landing, I began collecting just enough glowstone to make the Aether portal. I didn't want to collect more than I needed, cause, well, I was short on time. Back in the overworld, I scrambled all over my workshop as well as outside around the town, looking for the perfect place to put my Aether portal. But wherever I looked, it seemed like everywhere was overcrowded with something. So in the end, I just opted to build it in a random corner in the courtyard. The portal was activated, so I stepped in and wondered what waited for me on the other side. And honestly, it was not what I expected. I've been to the Aether before, and I remember it being, well, a little brighter. I wanted to see if the old rule still applied, and it looks like it did. That rule being that overworld tools are ineffective against Aether blocks. A diamond axe would mine just as slow as a wooden axe if you tried to chop down an Aether tree. I was then greeted by a hostile local, and without any weapons, I was ill-equipped to be here, so I went back, made a pickaxe, and began preparing for my new expansion campaign. I was gifted a book of lore, and I love how this thing works. Instead of there being chapters, all you have to do is put an item in, and the book, it gives you a description. I then went to go collect a ton of materials because I was going to be building something grand, and honestly, I'm getting pretty tired of making bricks this way, so I'll have to automate this eventually. Next, I gathered some wood, and lastly, I loaded all the materials into my backpack to save inventory space. You gotta love backpacks, and of course you can't forget about weapons. I lost my old rifle, so I decided to craft something new. Hopefully this new model would work just as well. And of course, I couldn't go in without my sidearm, and looking back on it now, I think my weapons were overkill, but they got the job done. With the enemies out of the way, I began terraforming the ground to start building my base of operations. I even brought my workbenches because of course I couldn't build something unless I had access to a large catalog of beautiful blocks. And with that I began setting up shop, a nice little base perfect for protecting me from all the evil Aether enemies that wanted me to go home. Unfortunately for them, I was here to stay, and for every block that I placed, well, that just further cemented my position. I ended up building this weird brick-looking house, and honestly, I wasn't that satisfied with the design, but like I said, it was a temporary base of operations. After that, I began building walls because the clouds were still bothering me, and these clouds were lethal. I had to clear them out every couple of minutes because they kept respawning, trying to knock me off the island. Another problem I had to face was that the Aether was very cold, so I crafted myself some campfires only to find out that fire doesn't work here. So, I had to come up with an alternative source of heat and light, because torches didn't work either. Even though I was still cold, at least I could see. After that, I continued terraforming because I had plans for an airship base. We're finally making blimps. Right before I went back, I discovered a hack where you could actually place a torch in an item frame and it would still give off light. I began collecting as much hemp fiber as I could. You could use the hemp fiber to craft string. The string, I could craft the wool I needed to make my sails. To make my blimp, I was gonna need a lot of sails. I crafted myself some andesite for my andesite alloys using a mechanical press, and after that, I began crafting all the sails I needed for the ship. And after that, I crafted the last of the required materials to make my blimp. put all of the materials inside of the mechanical crafter and watched it do its thing. This machine never ceases to amaze me. All that was left to do now was to take it for a test ride. There it was in all of its glory. I hopped in, this time knowing exactly what fuel it needed. This would, just like the airplane, and I took it around for a little cruise, and it flew beautifully. One of my favorite flying vehicles, to be honest. I went to the Aether to see how the airship would fare there. I began ascending into the sky, hoping to spot some cool stuff, and then I almost made a deadly mistake. Just like the airplane in one of the older videos, I almost fell out. Thankfully, I was able to stand safely on the upper part of the balloon. I cruised to one of the nearby islands and found a cave. Hoping to find some cool stuff, I proceeded and found this yellow ore called ambrosia. I collected a little bit, only to discover that this was the Aether's equivalent of coal, and I could actually make torches with it. I proceeded further into the cave with my new torches, when all of a sudden I noticed that there was a structure on my minimap. Inside of the cave, I began digging down when I uncovered this weird chamber and a chest with loot, a Zanite axe. I didn't know what it did, but it looked cool, so I kept it. In the other chest, there was a Zanite sword. But everything is not what it seems, like this mimic chest, an enemy posing as a harmless block. I tried defeating it with my gun, but it did little to no damage, so I decided to test out the Zanite sword. After defeating the enemy, it dropped its inventory. I then proceeded further into the dungeon only to find what was called a sentry, and then even more mimic chests. Then all of a sudden, I spotted this strange looking cube in the center of a chamber. I didn't know what it was, so I approached it with caution, hoping that it was something harmless. I knew it was an entity because it had a health bar, but I couldn't do any damage with my weapon. So I decided to mine it with my pickaxe, but it woke up and it was not happy. This cube came to life. That's right. For the first time in Minecraft, I saw that the blocks were fighting back. As if the mimic chests weren't bad enough, I now had an angry cube that was trying to demolish me. But slowly I began whittling his health away at the cost of my pickaxe's durability, pickaxes being the only way to harm the thing. Eventually both of them broke, so I had to be quick about crafting another pickaxe without getting killed in the process. Eventually I was able to place my crafting table down, but I had to make a run for it because I couldn't stay in one place for too long. I crafted my last pickaxe, hoping that this one would be the one to do the job. Thankfully, this pickaxe was a lucky pickaxe. This guy was agitated because it was doing such a good job at defeating him. I whittled his health down until he had almost nothing left, and the pickaxe plenty of durability. It was a long battle, but eventually this cube was defeated. I celebrated my first boss battle by doing a little victory dance. It was great. He even dropped some loot, including a bronze key. Underneath the boss pedestal was a small opening. Inside of the opening, there was a chest. I opened it up with my bronze key and found tons of loot. There were all sorts of items, from weapons and these weird little gummies. I was decked out in all my Aether gear. It was finally time to move on, but first I had to play with some of the new weapons I earned. After that, I hopped into my blimp and flew all the way back to our base of operations. This was quite the adventure, especially considering that this was our second time in the Aether. Then, my blimp was being occupied by this weird little slime guy. I had to get him out of there because I was going to use the blimp for later. Then my game glitched. I was just stuck in the air. So, I had to leave and restart the world. After that, I had this little epic shader. I don't know what it did, but I'm pretty sure I just wasted the item. It says it's a shader grabber. Anyways, lastly, I tested out this funny little cloud minion spawner. I had two little buddies by my side, and they shot cloud projectiles. Quite the reward. The first step for making this airbase was by first clearing out all of these no-texture blocks. I cleared out as many as I could, and then I began carving into this mountain where the base would be. I carved all the way to the top, hoping that this would be an ideal spot for building its foundation, when all of a sudden, I spotted this glorious pig. Look at him. Majestic. After that, I began constructing a wood outline that would make up the shape of our airbase. It was going to be circular, but I had to redo it a couple of times because I never get these right on the first try. I filled in the floor with slabs, and slowly but surely this began taking shape. I then added a sandstone outline just to start sprucing things up a bit. Next, I began chopping down these annoying Aether trees. I guess the timber mod doesn't apply to them? I don't know. What's even worse, I had to deal with the extra annoying cloud enemies. These guys were a plague. They kept trying to just knock me off the platform. Very difficult to work when you have these clouds just trying to send you flying into the sky. With the enemies temporarily out of the way, I began constructing columns that would make up the walls of this new base. Do you remember all those oak logs I collected before coming to the Aether? Well, this is where I was going to be using them. I topped every column off with a sandstone block, and then I made this ring of acacia. My next goal was to create this massive dome, and I would be making it out of the warped logs. Now when it comes to spheres in Minecraft, well, they don't mix. So I had to use a website that generated the shape for me, and then I just copied the design. In the end, I topped the dome off with the ambrosia torches, and then I made this massive spire out of sandstone, all while trying to eliminate the clouds in the way. The spire was finally done, as was the airbase. Well, almost. There were a couple more things I had to add for it to be complete. For example, I still had to make the supports. It was just floating on the side of a mountain. Not only that, but this was supposed to be an airbase, and every airbase needs a landing pad for the airships. This was where we were going to land our blimp, so I began building a bridge outwards towards the middle of the void. The whole plan was that this bridge would connect to a separate little island, and this island, that is where we would have our blimp land. I built the platform out of sandstone slabs, and then I added a railing out of oak trapdoors, that way the clouds couldn't blow me off. My next job was to start working on the stilts for the airbase. Thankfully, I had enough logs to get the job done, and I even had the help of a ring that gave me a double jump effect. The next job was to start turning more sand into sandstone, reason being, I was going to start filling in all of the gaps between the stilts. It was going to be a nice smooth sandstone base. I began filling in the gaps with my blocks. One by one, each block was placed until the job was done. I then began working on the bridge once more by adding a little bit of detail. I wanted to make it look like the bridge was being supported by these fence posts. This was another one of those moments where I was extremely terrified where a cloud would come out of nowhere and knock me off. After that, I backed up to look at my work, and I thought to myself that right there, that was a pretty good looking bridge. Inside the actual base, I placed down a bunch of furnaces to smelt a bunch of glass, because as you can see, the clouds were still not leaving me alone, and they were trying to attack me through the gaps. So with some warped planks and some glass, I made a warped window. And look at that, the warped window has a beautiful texture that just goes with the vibe of an airbase. All swirly-like, reminds me of the wind. I ended up filling every gap with these beautiful glass blocks. Before the create mod, I used to think that warped base blocks were ugly. Look at them now. I was extremely satisfied with the end result. This place was all coming together very nicely. After that, I ended up placing some torches on the platform, and from there I did a walkthrough around the entire airbase. As you can see, I even added a spiral staircase. I started walking down the staircase, oh, almost fell there. And as I walked down the spiral staircase, I admired all of the work I had put into this build. I hope you guys liked the build too, because honestly, building in the Aether was a pain. So many annoying enemies, but as you can see, well, at least I hope you see what I'm seeing, all of our hard work was finally worth it. The only thing left to do now was to take the airship, fly it above the base, and take it home to where it would now rest on its brand new landing pad. I slowly approached the landing pad and began a careful descent, hoping that a cloud wouldn't kill me. As soon as I made a landing, and it was a rough landing, I got out and I was extremely happy that I was finally finished with this project. This took me way longer than it should have, but we went to the Aether, we survived this new world, we even built a funny little house, and above all else, we made an airship. Finally, we had the capability to explore this brand new mysterious world. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I know I did. Be sure to tune in next time because the adventure is just getting started. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications. And if you enjoyed today's video, leave a like and let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. I have so much more to do, so as always, I will see you next time. This has been Doublesal. Thanks for watching.